All right, so we're going to do a real quick rundown of how to use the cameras. This is the Panasonic. They're both Panasonics, but this is the AG-HM-C1 150, the Panasonic 150. All right, and so to get started, we're going to show you how to turn this on. First off, if you need to connect anything to these cameras, this comes off, and these are all your connections and things right here. I'm going to close that back up, but that's what that panel is. The power button is right here on the handle on this side. It's got a little gray button that you push in, and then you push that down and take your hand off of it, and it should go ahead and kind of fire up, depending on if your battery is good, and it is. All right, so we see we've got a touch screen here on this side. So now I'm going to turn the camera, and we've got a bunch of buttons on this side, and we're going to go through how to do everything. All right, I'm assuming that you know how to use the tripod already because we went through that in class. Okay, so the first thing is how to get into the menu. These are not touch screens. So the menu button is up here, and then this is a joystick that you'll move back and forth and push in to make selections and that kind of thing to do that. So let's go ahead and do the menu first. Let me turn this so you can see it. All right, so I'm going to hit the menu button here on the top, which is this green button right here. And it's going to go into to some camera options here on the screen. I'm going to go down to recording setup. I'm just pushing the joystick button in, and it gives me some options there. The first one is recording format. So I'm going to hit that. It's currently set to 1080p, 1080-24, which is HD at 24 frames per second. The only two frame rates that you're going to shoot with probably in this class are going to be 1080-24 and 1080-30. 30 is for broadcast and 24 is for film. We're going to put it on, we're just going to leave it on film for this point, for this tutorial. I just hit the button again and makes everything go down. And that's really all we need for the menu right now. It says exit down here. You hit the menu button, which is what we're going to do to get out of this. This is this button right here. So now we're out of that. Well, let's talk about what some of the functions are here on the camera. So let's go top to bottom. These plus and minus button here are to turn the audio monitoring up or down. You probably won't use those because that's for the camera internally and not really on your headphones. So let's talk about what we got here at the top. This button here is for bars. So color bars is what that is. It's just if you don't want well, it's a calibration thing, and we don't really use that much. The next thing is shutter. So your shutter speed is one of the factors that allows light into the camera. If you push this button that says shutter, you'll see that your shutter speed changes. You can do that with the up and down button here. Generally, if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be 1/48. If it doesn't give you the option for 1/48, you want it to be as close as possible. So we're set on 1/48 now just by doing that. You let it go and it goes back there. Okay? So the next thing is going to be underneath those options are audio. On the other side of this camera, you have two XLR jacks. This is what controls those. And by XLR, that's a balanced audio input. So where you would put microphones, that kind of thing. So you have two channels and then you have two inputs for those channels. The first channel is gives you the option of doing an internal mic or selecting one of these two inputs. The internal mic is this mic on top of the camera. You would generally just use that for syncing up a microphone or something like that. You're not really going to be able to use that in very many situations that aren't controlled for production audio. So just kind of keep that in mind. In this case, it's already set to internal, so this mic is turned on here. And so if I move the camera this way so you can see it, you should be able to see that on channel 1, it's going up that way. When I snap my fingers, that's picking up all from this microphone. Okay? So on the next channel over, you can pick the internal microphone or input 2. And if I switched it to input to internal microphone, now instead of just one channel, you're getting that information on both. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that back down. So now I've got this set to where channel 1 is this microphone and channel 2 is set to be a handheld mic that you've got plugged in over here on the other side. These have phantom power. That's what these two buttons are. on this side, they turn that on. You will not need phantom power ever because we don't use condenser microphones with these. So always make sure that those are off. All right, underneath that, you've got some options to set for different controls on the display. Those are being the counter. So if you wanted the time code to start at 0, something like that, that's what you would do with those. We're not going to use those much. The next button over is the zebra, and it gives us the option of 100% or off or 80%. And what that means is you will have an indicator that looks like zebra stripes on this screen set at 80% or more. Let me turn this up. There it is. You can see it now. That's telling you, hey, I'm about to be clipping here. The whites are about to be too white. Okay? And so that is at 80, and at 100, it is telling me that I'm still not quite clipping, but if I turn this up, now that's past 100%. So zebra stripes are bad. But you can turn those on or off using this button here. All right, the next thing is that's image stabilization. We don't really need that unless you're going to shoot handheld, and what that's going to do is allow the lens to be more stable when you're not on a tripod. Okay, the LCD button down here is what you're going to use to brighten and dim your screen. It has nothing to do with your image, and we like to keep that pretty bright. And then over here is our waveform monitor, and this tells us how much light is coming into the camera. So I turned the exposure up so that we could see the zebras, and that's an indication of that right here at the top of the screen. So if I turn that down, that's a lot better looking image than what we would want. So generally you need to look at this as a football field and try to keep it between the 20s as much as possible. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off, and you can turn that off when you're recording as well. All right, so now I'm going to shut that so we can see the other controls. Okay, these are your 2 volume controls for each of your audio channels, channel 1, channel 2. The reason it's got plastic over it is so that you don't inadvertently hit it when you're recording something. You have an auto and a manual mode here. What that's going to do is it's going to let you have complete manual control over the camera, focus, iris, those kind of things, or if you want it to do it automatically. You're going to have to play with that a little bit and see what works best for you. The display mode here, hitting this button changes what shows up on your screen. It just cycles through. And then next to that, you have a choice of what this ring controls, if you want it to be focus or iris. What your iris is when I talk about aperture, it's allowing you to get more light into the camera just by turning this to one side or the other. So it's really great for fine tuning and like that. But if you flip this over, it allows you to focus. So you can focus in on somebody and make sure that you're getting the image that you want to get before you start shooting. So if you turn this ring here and the thing this is happening and it's not what you want to have happen, then you probably need to check this switch and make sure that you've got it switched to the right one. Okay, the next one is white balance. You can preset white balance on this camera. We generally leave that alone. And then we have gain, and this is really important. Our gain switch acts as an ISO control if you're familiar with a DSLR camera. And that's one of the main ways that you get light into the camera. Now, when you turn the gain up, it also adds more noise, more digital noise, which is a bad thing. So we generally want to shoot with as low gain as possible. But if we need to turn that up, it's okay, depending on the situation you're in. Just know that it's kind of a trade-off, okay? These controls are controls for the iris, but the next thing that's important is the ND filter. And think of that as sunglasses for the camera. Right here it's turned off. It goes all the way up to 1/64th. But what it does, I'm going to open this screen again so we can see it. Turn this a little bit and get this brightened up for you. Okay, so that's wide open. So now let's say that we're outside and we need to we need it to be darker. We're shooting an outdoor scene. So I flip that up once, it gets darker. I flip it up again, it gets darker. I flip it up again, it gets darker. So it's legitimately sunglasses for your camera. If you're not using it, make sure you've got it turned off. Okay? And that's pretty much that. And so once we do that, we need to know how to zoom in and how to start recording. Okay? So we've got 2 sets of controls for that. One being on top of the camera, you have an in and out here, and then there's a red button on top of the camera that's right here that will allow you to do that. We also, on this other side have hand controls that will do the same thing. Right next to where we turn the camera on, this is the record button that'll start recording, and then we also have a zoom here. Okay? Most of the things that you need to know with this camera are from that. I'll make sure that we put the instruction manuals for both of these on Blackboard so that you have those to go through. And don't be afraid to ask questions.